and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Process, where we get real, raw, and grounded. I'm one of your hosts, Marco Antonio Alvarez, also known as El Marco on Facebook. I'm here with my fellow co-host, Mr. Wesley Mosier. Today's topic of conversation is going to be imperfect action and all the other implications that come with that. So I'm going to hand it off to Wesley to open us up with the statement.
Yes, thank you. And as always, we're trying to relate this to our actual lives and what are we actually, working on and developing within ourselves. And I think this is pretty relatable to everybody, whether it's, you have this pending task and you are a master procrastinator because of fear or laziness or this imposter syndrome. I don't think I can do it, or whatever it is. The thing that holds us back often isn't the fact that things are difficult, but that we make it this dragon in our mind. Like I read this book, The Obstacle is the Way, and I think they briefly talked about how we make this our monster bigger than what it really is, and then we're too afraid to confront it, just because of the idea of what it is in our mind. And Jordan Peterson, he's a clinical psychologist. I'm sure a lot of people that listen to us know him because I reference him all the time. And I referenced this story too, but I'm going to reference it again. He was working with this lady that had like, what's that fear where you can't talk to people? It's like a clinical thing where like you're too afraid to like go outside or like
Going outside is agoraphobia, if I'm not mistaken. Fear of
it might
open
have been
places.
oh no. Well, anyways, it was a fear of like interacting with people and just like like super anxiety. I forget what it's called, but anyway, she was so afraid, like she couldn't even like look out the window, basically. Like
Damn.
she was just like she didn't want to see anything. So Jordan, instead of making it this huge thing, like, all right, let's go into a crowd of people and just deal with it,
Give her a
and
heart
just have
attack.
that panic attack at once. He
She
was like,
fucking
okay, well,
dies.
right. He was like, and I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, well, could you look out the window and just let's just observe people. Okay, cool. You mastered that. Now like can you just sit at a coffee shop with me? Let's not talk to anybody. Let's just like literally just sit there and just like observe what's going on. Okay, cool. Why don't we introduce ourselves to somebody? And he took her to a level where she ended up doing stand-up comedy. I don't know how the hell she did
Yeah,
that.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But stand-up comedy is like known for being like impossible to do because it's so anxiety ridden. Like you talk about public speaking, that's like the creme de la
Number
creme of
yeah. Higher
public
than
speaking,
death.
because
People are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death.
and imagine trying to make people laugh, right, that don't know you and your humor's niche. And so anyways, that shows the power of many things, momentum that we've talked about, all sorts of stuff, but specifically imperfect action, right? Because what she could have easily done and probably had done for years prior is just say, no, this dragon's too big, I'm not going to confront it. But Jordan posited a different approach. He's like, okay, why don't we bite the elephant one chunk at a time, right? Like they say. And Seneca, I love Stoicism, and Seneca has a quote that I resonate with. He says, it's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult. So basically, because we put things off, that dragon in our head just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. When in reality, instead of like trying to have perfection, we could have just tried to make progress, and then building that progress, like Alex Hormozy says, don't build confidence, build evidence, right? By taking those small steps one day at a time, you build the evidence in your mind that you're the type of person to accomplish that. So that's how I'll start it off. And I think it's relevant to everybody's life, but especially mine.
Oh, it's relevant to everyone's life. We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of procrastination. We're all guilty of perfectionism. We're all guilty with dealing with, and I'm very curious, and I don't necessarily, let's not add too much to the word that I'm using right now, guilty, right? It's something, a lot of negative connotations, but okay, how about this? We all succumb to the tendencies of procrastination, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, all that stuff that halts progress of any kind because we don't want to look stupid. We don't want to make mistakes, right? That woman that Jordan Peterson was working with, where he finally took her to, let's just call it the culmination and the height of exposure. When I was doing stand-up comedy, I think I still do it. It's just not on a stage. But when I was actively on stage, there was this joke that would go around where musicians we would joke about musicians, how they have it a lot easier than comedians because they had their music to hide behind. They had a guitar or an instrument, whatever it was. But when you're up there as a comedian, you are naked as fuck. All you have is your words and the microphone. And you're going up there in the hopes that you're going to be able to connect with people and they're going to resonate and it's going to elicit a whole brain reaction, which is laughter. That's all it is. When the brain laughs, it's a whole brain thing. So it lights up. I get it. Boom. And that's why you're like, ha. And you've got this moment of just like bliss and ecstasy because you just found that thing so entertaining. Right.
Okay.
And we are, of course, everyone's going to know this. We're our own worst enemy. And so we've name dropped quite a few people already, right? Peterson, Seneca, Hormozy. And then now we've got another one, Bezos, something that I've heard him say as far as just like the anxiety of procrastination. And it's just like, just send that email, just start with the email, start with whatever thing it is. All right. I was having I've been having similar things happening to me as of late. I'm looking into this other opportunity and I was going to start marketing with it. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to do it. And so I'm going to start with 5 emails. Last night, I was like, I'm going to start with 5 emails. Here we go. Today, I got a goal to do 100. I have no
Yeah.
idea how to do fulfillment yet for this thing yet, but I'll figure it out. I know the first step is to get the word out and to start marketing. So I'm going to do that. And so then after I did that and just a few reps of that, I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. And that's always the thing. Once you do it, it isn't so bad. But beforehand, we are creating this whole thing in our minds, and it becomes this really bad thing. And oh, I can't do it. I got to make sure that I got this in place and that in place and this in place. And it's like, cool. You're never going to get that thing done.
Right. Yeah. Epictetus, I have another quote from Epictetus. He said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. So we got to, again, it's like a plea to change the frame from, you know, I have to conquer this dragon in one fell swoop to, can I bite off his toe or something? How can I win Jordan talks about breaking that fear, breaking that big task. It doesn't just have to be fear, by the way. It could be anything that's stopping us from taking action. So breaking whatever that is, the laziness of, oh, I don't want to, go on the run today and do whatever. Okay, can I at least stand up
Yeah.
out of my
Yeah.
bed? Can I at least put my shoes on? That used to be wins for me. Like
Yeah.
literally a win for me when you deal with depression is, okay, you know what? I didn't go on a run today, but I put my shoes on and I went outside. That's
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
because it elicits pride and confidence. And like, some people can't relate to that. Some people understand what I'm talking about. And I remember there was this shift that I had in my life back in 2022 when I was very paralyzed and overthinking and fear and all this sort of stuff. And I was just kind of just like apathetic all the time, not really taking action. And I remember this distinct moment. I was like, oh, I have this idea of what I can do to take action. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, cool. And then I went outside and I was like, no. That mindset of I'm going to do it tomorrow is the problem. You got to have the problem of I'm going to do it now. You know, it doesn't even matter what you do. You just have to have the mindset of I'm the type of guy that does things now, you know? And so I realized it was an identity change that needed to happen, not just a results change. I needed to change my identity to I'm going to do it now. So, and it's so crazy how stacking small wins every day can like compound into this huge domino effect. of momentum for you when you just start to do it. So starting now just became, okay, let me just sit down and just write a list of things. Okay, cool. Now I have the list. And then now you're like confident. You're like, well, I just did that. And now the bigger thing looks a little less big, you know, and then it's just this momentum thing. But I think what derails us is when we negotiate with that obstacle, right? Like when we say, when we start to doubt the process and start and like lose faith in like the fact that we need to take action, we kind of like, oh, convince ourselves that it's overwhelming or we can't do it, and so we just kind of take a breather and procrastinate. And so I think the focus with imperfect action is also that we need to consistently be taking action no matter what it is. We need to be on that train track or else we can quickly derail. So there's this concept that I learned from Patrick Bet-David where he said all the winners and champions and everybody that you like, Michael Jordan and all those guys, like what made them great is even if they had a bad day or something didn't go their way, they lost the game, they would show up the next day as if that never happened and they're here to just dominate again. So they're just, it's like this relentlessness. Like I'm just going to stack winning days every single day, like nonstop, so we got to have that mindset of like constantly trying to stack wins, constantly trying to build that momentum for ourselves, no matter how big or small, right? Because once you're on the tracks, you're on the tracks and you're good. Or
Yeah.
what you were going to say something?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, so there's this guy named Brad Stolberg. I'm a big fan of his work. I've mentioned it before on the show. I'm going to mention it again because he's that good. A couple of books of his, The Practice of Groundedness and The Master of Change. He's on Instagram as well. And he talks about something similar here about consistency with our wins. But he's also just a big proponent that some days are going to be better than others. Some days won't be as good as the last. But as long as you keep showing up and we stack those wins, like you were saying, so we can divide wins up into big wins, small wins, if you want to, or you don't have to. I say that I don't like doing that, but then I end up doing that, right? And it's this funny thing that it's almost like I become acclimated to my daily routine that I don't notice or see it as a win. So, for example, me getting up Monday through Friday, me getting up at 4:30 and not hitting that snooze button, I haven't done that in who knows how long. First thing I do, make the bed, go get my contacts on, right? Do my three pages of journaling, go my ritual work, my workout, and it's consistent, 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 no matter how I feel, right? As of late, I've been dealing with a shit ton more of fear, shit ton of anxiety unknowns and all that stuff. And I'm still doing that. All right. For some of us out there, they see that and they go, oh my God, that's amazing. Right. For the ones who are having struggles with that kind of thing. At this point, I see it like that's just what I fucking do. No big deal. But then I got to step back and go, actually, that's pretty cool that I'm able to maintain that. And for as long as I have, despite what's going on with me and despite this and despite the voices in my head. When I'm talking about the voices in my head, I'm talking about the mind. I'm not talking about you as a person. I'm talking about the mind. I think this is where we start getting into some other realms that we can touch upon where it's important that we separate our sense of identity from whatever thought, emotion, limiting belief, whatever it might be, whatever is coming up. Recognize it and act in spite of it, or at least
Right.
act to the best of your ability. So here's the thing, right? I came across this. I got to send it to you. I came across this thing that somebody made about Jocko. It's an Instagram reel. And it starts off, and it's this like cartoon AI thing. And it starts off with Jocko's face all weird and shit. And it's like, wake up at 1 a.m., fall out of the freezer, boom, gargle pee. Get up to get up to go to work, drag a tire to work while you're listening to it's like you're listening to five personal development podcasts at the same time. Good. Ex-wife calls you and says you can't see the kids this weekend. Good. They're only slowing you down. Go to work, gargle more pee. Do your work on a keyboard, but it's in Chinese. Don't understand Chinese. Good, but you will. And it just keeps going on and on. So extreme, right? Eat broken glass for breakfast. Good. And it keeps going on and on and on. And it made me think. And so here's my grander point, because we are talking about imperfect action, right? And this is something, again, about the space that I think is a little bit systemic. And we mentioned it in our last podcast, 2 podcasts ago.
Okay.
You see this, especially in the sales space, a lot of dudes taking on that hardcore approach like they were a fucking Goggins, like they were a fucking Jocko, right? It's like, slow your roll, bro. Like, you're not a Navy SEAL. You're a sales guy. You're a sales professional. For the rest of the normal folks, let's bring it down. I'm not saying that one should not aspire to those things. What I'm saying is I think we need to have a little bit more compassion and love for ourselves. We set some standards for ourselves, and let's do our best to achieve those standards.
Yeah.
But let's
Well,
not go ahead.
I was going to say, and I've talked to you briefly about this. I have a little bit of an unorthodox, stance on that. I don't feel like society is, a ranking system, so to speak. Like when I look at I've talked to you about this, like the rate, the ratio, your transformation ratio, like the rate at which you are transforming personally. And if you were to measure, like I always give the example to everybody, like like a homeless person that is a drug addict, right? Like a homeless person on crack. If he were to get a job and stop doing heroin or stop doing crack, like that is a huge transformation.
Yep.
Versus for me, if I made 10K in a month, it's like, okay, but what was the rate of transformation that I went through? Because maybe I was in a situation where I was like blessed with a job that could afford me that. And then I do something and it's like, okay, yeah, that's really good. Like compared to him, that's like, whoa, but like compared to what I'm doing, I only transformed this much. So like for me to have the same equivalent of transformation, I would have to start a business that makes $1 million a year or something like that. And I'm not doing that. So that's my point, is like, I can't judge people that we can't, it's hard for me to wrap my head around judging people, because I see people that people would say, oh, well, you know, you could argue that you're better in a better situation than them, but it's like, yeah, but they're transforming more. And then eventually they just beat you anyways, right?
Right.
Like for the example of the sales bros that you were just talking about. And I hope I'm not losing people. I hope they're like, I'm making some sort of sense. Like the sales bros out there that are, and I know what you're talking about, right? They try to have this like dialed in routine that's optimized and everything's perfect. They're trying to kind of have that, get that hit of like approval, where they're like, oh, I have approval from my peers, kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
they're not actually facing their dragon, whatever it is, because if they were, there would be a humility factor in play of like, dude, the demon that I'm facing, like the dragons that I'm confronting are so scary. I can't talk to anybody. I feel overwhelmed. Like if you're not pushing, like Goggins talks about this all the time. Like if you're not pushing yourself to the brink of like, you can't really sustain it. Like you're at your threshold, then you're not growing.
Well,
You're not
yeah.
developing.
Well, that's okay. Yes and no. The thing is with Goggins, though, he is pushing himself physically to the brink consistently, right? The guy's a phenom. To expect like the general population to achieve that type of thing I
No, but
think
again,
it's
it's not status. Like my
well,
someone start
no,
like
no, I'm not.
that
Well, yeah,
lady's
go ahead,
that
go ahead.
lady's
Yeah,
threshold was just going to the coffee shop. Like that was her threshold.
right. And she took it all the way to doing stand up comedy, which in a lot of ways you could say is you want to talk about overcoming the pinnacle of fears. When people are when they report that their number one fear is public speaking, higher than death, she overcame a lot. Like, yes, her ratio of transformation was huge, right? So
Mhm.
someone like Goggins, and it's like, and I appreciate what he has done for the overall psyche of humanity and showing what is possible. Absolutely. On a physical level, and what kind of control he has of his mind in order to push his body beyond. I mean, that's literally part of what they do with
Right.
special
Well,
operations
for
training.
me to do what he does, I would kill myself probably. Like I would probably
I
literally die trying
Yeah,
to do
and
what he's
and
doing.
I would say the majority of folks would end up hurting themselves. I mean, you
Right.
read about how many times he has hurt himself doing these things, right? And what I'm saying is that ultimately, like, is that sustainable? He and I are the same age. I am not doing the shit that he does. Now, does that make me a pussy? Does that make me less of a man? I don't know. Depending on
Right.
who's
Well,
watching and who's judging, I don't care.
I would
Right?
argue he's an archetype, right? Because like if you want to, and we're kind of going off topic a little bit, but
Yeah,
it's all
a
right
little bit.
because it ties back in a little bit. So like I look at David as like an archetype. Like I would never
Yeah.
try to be his exactly who he is, but in the same way I look at Jesus as an archetype,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Christians love Jesus and get all behind that, but is it possible to be selfless like 100%? Is it possible to like have no sin, right? Like no.
right, right.
Jesus is the archetype of like perfect what a perfectly loving and selfless individual could looks like, and we're just striving for that. We're striving toward that refinement, but we're not gonna get there. But the process of that transformation is
Yeah,
what makes
yeah.
our lives
Yeah. And
meaningful.
yeah, and that's the refinement of self, right? That is the alchemical process that we take on to refine ourselves to become the best version of ourselves. And those are archetypes and those are high standards that we should do our best to strive for if that's what we want to do. And yeah, okay, cool. Part of that is taking imperfect action. Yes, the as the saying goes, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. All right. And so I think where there's a little bit of a divergence for me is the idea of sustainability over time, consistency over time. And I take that back into training principles, training like physical training. So not every
Right.
single training session can be to failure. It's just you're not going to fucking recover unless you're like 18 and on a shit ton of stuff,
Right.
you know.
Yeah,
And
I get what you're saying. So
you see what I'm
the
saying?
the threshold thing is what I'm talking about is like um more in the personal development kind of arena, right? Like those
Yeah,
guys, those guys that like nobody arrives at like their ideal perfect version of themselves, right? That's not a thing. That we have an archetype in our head of what we could, the perfect image that we could be. We're striving toward refinement, like we talked about. We're never going to emulate the perfect being that exists in all categories, right? But we can refine ourselves daily, and that's what I'm saying is like the people that think that the personal development journey ends, or at least they can take a breather because they wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and have their daily morning dialed in, and then they're looking down at the homeless drug addict that just got a job and got off crack, is fucked up, because this guy is actually on that personal development journey. He's on that hero's journey where he's slaying the dragon. And like if you look at his story, it's a much more compelling movie to watch because he's actively slaying the dragon, while this guy is the king that's getting fat and
yeah.
spoiled.
You fucking nailed
You know
it
what I
right
mean?
there. You fucking nailed it right there. That's the thing. I asked a question a while back on socials and I said, if your life was a movie, would it be worth watching? That guy, that dude who got off the drugs and cleaned himself up and fucking took a step up that way, I'm more interested in his story than some fucking dude who went from 100,000 to 1 million. Fuck that guy. It's not, ooh. And I don't mean it like fuck him, like, no, I mean kind of like, dude, no, I'm not interested. Your movie would be fucking boring, bro.
For that guy, it's marginal gains. So we're
Yeah,
not inspired
yeah,
by
right.
marginal gains.
No one's gonna watch that movie. How I went from 6 figures to 7 figures. No one is going to watch that. Maybe some sales bro who's gonna sit there going like, "This is great," but for that one dude who was in the fucking dirt and changed his shit around, I saw a reel the other day of some kid who showed his before and after. Right, he showed his video of him when he was still hooked on drugs, and he was oh, so messed up. Just, the sores on the lip and the eyes and the hair and the sweaty sheen, just looking like shit. And you can just feel the energy. And then he showed his transformation 3 years later into sobriety and the new video. And it was just like this angelic being. We're just like, oh my God, so happy for that guy.
Right.
That's the story.
It's inspiring because for us to think that we're the same person, like for those people that are on the pedestal, to think that if they were in the same situation and they were the homeless drug addict that was literally addicted to crack and homeless, who knows what his backstory was? Who knows how he got there? What his
Right.
upbringing was? To assume that you would be the hero that just fucking 180s everything is completely arrogant because you're not 180ing your own life, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to look down and compare penis sizes, you know, mentally, just think about the fact that like, and you, there are, by the way, there are humble, like successful people. Like they're like, dude,
Absolutely.
I'm just a, I'm just a small
Absolutely.
fish in a bigger pond. Like I'm
Yeah.
realizing there's
Yeah.
bigger fish here. Like
Yeah. Absolutely.
once you
Yeah.
level up, you're like, oh shit, now there's billionaires out there. Like what in the world? Like no matter where you go, there's always a guy that did it better. You know what I mean?
Of
And you
course.
got to have you got to level up. You can't be that big fish in a small pond and just get hits off of bullying the little fish. You got to okay, now get into the ocean where there's sharks there and they're going to fuck
Mhm.
you up. You know what I mean? Like so all that is to say the reason why it was important to go down that rabbit hole is because we can't have that mindset that we arrive, right? Imperfect action by definition means we got to constantly
Yeah.
be taking action no
Yeah.
matter what it is, as
Yeah.
stupid as it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
simple as it is. Get out of your head, get into your
Yeah.
body, and just
Yeah.
go.
And I think you bring up a real important point, and I also want to make it clear that in regards to Goggins, I'm a huge fan of his work and his transformation alone from a 300-pound fucking exterminator to what he's done is amazing, and it's inspiration to the rest of humanity. I just want to make that very clear. Now, Wesley just brought up something that I think is extremely important to this work of personal development, and it's the idea that you never arrive. You don't, because it's about, pun intended, it's about process. It is always about the process. Things always, and I've said it before and I'll say it again to the day I die. Nothing is static. Everything is in flux. Things change. It's always falling apart. There is nothing to hang on to. We are constantly in a state on this journey. You think you arrive? Cool. Enjoy it for a second, but don't stop. You stop, you stagnate, you fall back to old habits and patterns. I notice it with myself. I'm sure some people listening notice it as well. So we've definitely have gone over way beyond the 20 minutes that we normally try to keep it at. Right. And so I think we should wrap it up here with shit. I think those are some decent closing statements, unless you've got something else to add.
Uh, no, I don't know. Today was an imperfect action podcast, I guess. So we're, I just I did want to say one more thing that I forgot to say, which is that um who you are now, and I always think about this to myself, who I am now and who I could be. And I think Hormozy even said this in a quote, but who I am and who I could be, the bridge to get there is just the action that I haven't taken yet, and I think imperfect action is the highest bang for your buck in terms of the rate of transformation that we were talking about. Like to really know that you're transforming as much as you could and squeezing the juice out of life. Because I never want to get to the end of my life and be like, man, I could have been so much more if I had just done more, or if I had just tried harder or whatever. Um, you know, taking imperfect action instead of just trying to have a perfect plan all the time. We always try to have a perfect plan or understand everything 100% before we go, and just doing the damn thing and figuring it out during the journey, you know, I think is a surefire way to get there as fast as you possibly can. So
Yeah,
that's what I'll leave it with.
right on. And I think I'm just going to leave it with what I said before you said what you said. And so ladies and gentlemen, that has been
Cool.
another episode of The Process. We'll be on YouTube very soon. So then that way you can actually subscribe and all that good stuff. All right, folks. Take care of yourselves. Take some imperfect action. Bit by bit is a cinch, and yard by yard is very hard. All right, take it easy.